Joining us for this segment is an author of the book Pretty Girls Don't Get Cancer. We have Patricia Diaz, who is joining us, and she is someone who survived stage 4 terminal cancer. And she actually sat down and wrote a book about, getting this diagnosis and what it was like. Patricia, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
So the first thing I would ask you is that knowing that when you hear such earth-shattering news that you have a disease and you're young, you were young, 16 years old, if I'm correct. What is that? What goes through your head as an adolescent, to hear that kind of news?
If I look back at that moment, my world kind of stopped at that moment, and I was in pretty bad shape. So I almost wanted to be freed from everything I was living at that time. And I wrote this scene in the book where I'm seeing the beach and wanting to just fly like a seagull. And I just wanted to be free from the shackles of what I was living. But then I heard my sister's voice kind of drawing me back and said, but for our creator, it's the same to cure a cold than to cure a terminal disease. All we just have to do is believe. After that, there was no going back. I was in it. So even if I wanted to change anything, I couldn't. That was my reality. So I had nothing else to do but just face it.
So I understand that it was kind of a bit of a trial and error and a lifestyle adjustment. Is this wasn't just necessarily where you're like, well, anything that is going to help me cure this, but what was the process like for you to find something that would help you or heal you, or at least put you in remission, mind, body, and spirit?
So it was a long process. There were certain things that kept coming in, and certain words like forgiveness and meditation and breathing and things like that. And they were coming in drops, and it was a lot of times it was overwhelming because I didn't know if I was doing enough, if what I was doing was okay and it was going to heal me. I was blind. I just didn't know what was going to work or what wasn't going to work. So I kept hearing things and trying things, and whatever resonated with me, I kept on trying and practicing. So it was a learning process. It wasn't like, well, now you have to meditate, and I will sit there and meditate, and it worked. No, it was a lot of trial and errors, a lot of roller coaster rides of emotional roller coaster rides of this doesn't work, I'm not going to try that, yes, this works, I want to try it, and just head on, like the forgiveness therapy I did with a psychotherapist, and that's in the book, so I won't talk too much about that. Mm-hmm. But yes, it was trial and error. Some things I just felt in my heart that I needed that I wanted that. And of course, there was also the medical side that the doctors were in charge of, and I let them do what they needed to do.
It's worth noting that you are 30 years in remission. Is that accurate?
30 plus years, yes. I'm
30
not
plus
anymore.
Okay, so to say, when did you decide that you wanted to share your experience with others who might be enduring something similar, whether it's someone who is as young as you were, or just someone who gets a diagnosis that you have stage 4 cancer and it's terminal?
So this story has been nagging me for a long time, wanting to come out, wanting for me to write it. I have always been busy and working and this and occupied in multiple different things, so I kept shutting it down. Finally was in a phase of unemployment where I used that fuel of that rejection fuel of like, the world doesn't care about me anymore. And I used all that to learn how to write a memoir in English. And And well, the story came out, and it was 30 years later. On top of that, when I was going through it, and when I was learning all of the mindfulness and alternative therapies, I didn't know if any of that was going to work. So I didn't feel at that time that I was an authority, that I could talk about it. And now it kind of feels like, okay, it's worked, for good or for bad, I don't know. Some of those strategies have worked to keep inflammation down and keep me healthy. So I wrote about it, and if whoever can benefit from those techniques and from the research I did back then, so be it. I love it.
So you have added author to your title. But what else? What has your career? What is your career path? What do you do when you aren't penning an award-winning book?
Oh gosh. Well, I get to interview with Kevin. I get to talk to very different, amazing people about the experience, and share the story. Also get to volunteer in cancer organizations. I've cooked for cancer organizations before for week-long retreats. I've taught yoga. I've spoken to folks in those cancer organizations, or support cancer organizations. So it's one side of my career right now that I love, and has always been very quiet, but now it's resurfacing.
And again, if you are just joining us, we are speaking with Patricia Diaz, and we're talking with her about her book, Pretty Girls Don't Get Cancer, as she shares the details of being an adolescent, 16 years old, and having a doctor being blunt, saying you have cancer, and it doesn't look good at this particular time. You talk about writing a book and deciding to start doing documentation. How long did it take for you to kind of at least gather all the information and everything that you had gone through, so you can kind of compile this into a help aid to someone else who may be dealing with something that you endured?
Well, to be honest, it took a lot of years. I think the first version, or the first few chapters, I wrote probably like 10 years ago. And then it was only like 4 years ago or 3 years ago when my sister went to Venezuela, where we used to live, and she brought my journals back then. And that really got all the information that I needed, because it gave me times, it gave me feelings, emotions, and things that I specifically wrote back then. And that really helped me write the book in a more, I guess, more closer to what was the reality back then. So I took those emotions and put them in the book. And then I wrote that first draft, and it's like that very ugly first draft that you have to pretty much throw away. And then I joined the writers group, and they helped me with my writing skills, and out came the book, and that was the second draft.
And what was that? What was that like? What really led you to? Was it after you completed the first draft and having others view it and look at it, like going, okay, maybe I need to go speak with folks who write, so I can better articulate what I went through, to be able to communicate what I endured?
Well, I actually spoke with a mentor that I know from one of the companies that I worked on before. And when I had about 30,000 words, I talked to her, and she said, Patricia, to be considered halfway serious, you have to write at least 60,000 words. So I enclosed myself in a room, in a hotel room, and all I did was write for a month. And then that's when the first draft came. And then she kept giving me tips. Well, now, your writing is okay. You really need to focus on these things. And I would encourage you to join a writers group. So I did. And it was the best thing I did because they really gave me chapter by chapter a very good critique of the pages of the book and my writing style. And that was the Creative Washington meetup at the time. They've changed the names, but incredible. I give them credits also in my book because of all the help that they gave me in writing and my writing skills. Towards the end, they even said, your writing skills are completely different from when you started. So that was helpful.
What do you feel were some of the most helpful tips that helped you grow as a writer, as a storyteller, and even so, and anybody, I mean, I've done writing, and there comes times when sometimes the words will just flow on the page, and then there's other times where like you can't get past two sentences.
Right. Well, focusing on the scene and on the moment of the scene and describing things so that and it's almost like a painting. When you want to draw the attention on certain things, you highlight those colors. Well, the same thing is with words. And that was something I got from them. Paint those things that you really want to highlight. What was the temperature like? What was the color, the room, the words? How did you feel? Be more specific. I was using narration too much in my first draft, so I narrated instead of talking in first person. And talking in first person is very hard because you run that risk of being coming across a little arrogant. And so it's finding that right balance between writing about the people around you, the scenes, and how you felt with everything that was going on around you.
So I would ask you: would you say is English your first language, or what is your first language?
Spanish.
So was there at any point in time where you maybe thought about writing a book in Espanol, and maybe that would have been an easier process?
That would have been so much easier to write my book in Spanish. Now I'm writing it in Spanish. And I tell you, it's like writing a second book. It's completely different. The Spanish is more circular. There's just different ways of saying things. So you can't just grab the book and translate it in Google and that's it. No, it's just a completely different book in Spanish.
But would the process and the storytelling be similar, or is it because of how you may phrase things in Spanish, it's completely different as it is in English?
So the story is a story. It's probably the story arcs are slightly different. And also the phrasing, of course, is different. So the way you describe things, the descriptors go in different places in the sentence. So if I translate it word by word, it's gonna feel very robotic. People are probably going to understand it, but it's going to be robotic. If in order for it to be artistic, it has to be a different book.
Okay. What was some of the other things that you learned about as being an author and putting this book together? Was it a matter of placement? If you had photographs, picking a cover, what was some of the other things that you were able to help yourself become an award-winning author?
Gosh, it's a hard question. I put a lot of my heart in that book, and I chose every single word, every single picture that I wanted in there. So choosing the scenery, and then choosing the person that was going to do all the art part, that was fun because he's an artist, and he's somebody I know from Venezuela. And he was able to capture some of the thoughts that I had of indigenous art, right? And you can see some of that indigenous art, very simple, but colorful in the book. So he captured that really well, and that's I just love that. The whole process was hard because I never have done it before, but it was fun to discover it.
Doing a little reading up on your book and you yourself and the details of the book. One of the phrases that I came across in regards to you telling your story was that there were times that you actually did not sugarcoat what you went through. What was it like to kind of put realism in your story so that folks understand that you're not just being a storyteller, but you're trying to share your agony through words?
Yeah, connecting with the moment of my first chemotherapy, for example. When I wrote about it the first time, I almost didn't want to write about it. And the writing group said, what was it like, really? Like, you have to tell us when you went through it, you felt that the chemicals going through. How did your body feel? All of that. I had to kind of relive the whole thing, and it wasn't pleasant. But in order for the message, the actual message to come across of the book, I had to paint that horror story very well. So a lot of times I actually had to relive some of the things, like when my hair fell, how did I feel? And these were memories that were tucked away that I hadn't relived in such a long time. But it was almost therapeutic for me to go back and go through them again and forgive some of those episodes in my life. And I don't mean because I did anything wrong. I mean forgiveness as in, okay, I let it go.
I think anytime we as human beings, anytime we're going through a traumatic experience in our life, whether it has to do with our health, whether it has to do with day-to-day operations in our lives, family and friends can be adversely affected by it. And I would believe that you had to share stories about, some of your tougher times, how the illness was affecting you and how it affected your family. What was it like to share those stories and then have your family see it and actually have them vet it out and go, yeah, that's exactly what it was like?
Well, I kept the story as me telling it from my point of view. So I tried not to get too biased by their opinions, right, when I was writing it, because I wanted to keep my point of view as a central point. As when my sister was doing things and when my brother was doing things, that's how I saw them, right? They might have a different view and a different story to tell, but during the whole story, I try to keep my point. For the most part, so my father read it cover to cover. I think some of my siblings haven't read it completely. They have their reasons, right? And my father sometimes will make a comment, well, that part wasn't like that. And I said, well, that's how I saw it. But for the most part, he says it's pretty accurate. So
yeah, if you are just tuning into this segment, we're speaking with Patricia Diaz. She is the author of Pretty Girls Don't Get Cancer. Don't get fooled by the title itself, as it's a fantastic cover and it's a fantastic story of somebody who has found a way to persevere and is sharing that story. Do you feel that that a part of the putting the book together was also to at least share positive vibes with the reader, that if in fact this is something that happens to you or a family member, that the power of positivity is something that can be very medicinal?
absolutely. There are, even though it is a very hard topic of crisis, family crisis, there are a lot of very positive messages in that book. The power of community, the power of prayer, believe, the power of friends, and being there for one another. And just and having an open mind to learn new things during that process, and giving yourself the permission to be sad, to cry when you need to laugh. So going, riding the wave of the illness as best you can and as graceful as you can, knowing that you will fall down. And there are people that are wonderful people that are around you that will want to help.
Well, and I mean, a perfect example is if I asked the 16-year-old Patricia, do you think that you're going to be somebody who specializes in plant-based diets, or being a plant-based chef? I'd be curious what 16-year-old Patricia would say, but I'm sure the older version of Patricia would say something entirely different.
Absolutely. Well, 16-year-old Patricia would say, "Get the heck out of here. No, I like my meat." and cheese and bread and everything, right? But yes, today I'm completely different diet than what I had back then. And I just feel good and feel healthy, with energy. So it's changed me for the positive.
So we get a few more minutes left with you here, Patricia, and that is all right. So you get your final draft all together. You're ready to, you've picked your cover art, and you're sending it off to have the first edition printed. What was that like, and what was it like to get the hard copy in your hands from the publisher?
Finally. I hugged it. I cried. Joy tears, of course. It was an emotional moment that I finally, whatever happens to the book, it's beyond me, right? But I did it. I finally completed what that nagging voice was telling me I needed to do. So it felt really good.
So, if folks who are tuned into this program, this segment, want to know how they can get a copy now, where is it available these days to be able, if someone wanted to purchase a copy?
Sure, thank you for that. It's in Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, Walmart, Target, Book Baby. So multiple venues, multiple places that can be purchased. You just put the name. You can put my name or the name of the book, and you'll get several options there, whatever preference you have. So it's available in ebook and also in hard copy.
Okay. English right now and Spanish later, or both?
Yeah, English right now, Spanish. I'm hoping sometime soon. I'm still writing it.
Okay. And a couple of times I've referred to your book as being an award-winning book. My understanding is that it actually received a bronze medal from the 2021 Independent Publishers Book Awards.
Yeah.
What's that like for it to be recognized for somebody who didn't realize she'd be writing a book about the experience she was dealing with cancer, to someone who is being recognized by a publisher?
Put the topic aside and the book aside. It was just a validation of writing, and I'm incredibly honored and happy about the prize, the award. It was a surprise because I entered it mostly for the feedback and to get the experience, right? So it was a very pleasant surprise that I actually won it, and it felt really good. It's a validation that I can write good English.
Now, if folks fast become a fan of yours, now have you set up a website, or is there a way for them to follow you on social media?
Absolutely. My website is mpatriciadiaz.com. And you'll have you can see all the social media there. I'm on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook as well.
Okay, and I think you've kind of said that you're technically kind of writing your second book. Knowing that you've kind of really gotten a grasp of writing, is there a chance that depending on how well this book is received, that there could be another book in the works?
I think so. I want to. Yes, definitely. I'm throwing some ideas around what that might be. But I definitely want to keep writing, and it's something that I found that I like to do a lot. So I think it's brewing. I don't know what it's going to be yet.
Okay. And now we're at that point in time in our conversation as we get ready to wrap it up. And well, I'll ask you a couple of final questions, and that is, if you were to impart a little wisdom on some of the folks who are out there writing for their first time, if you could share a tip with them, or just give a little bit of advice to help nudge them along, what would you share with them for some for a tip or two?
And for a tip, I would say write as if nobody else was going to read it, and and just pour your heart and soul in there, and let that be whatever is going to be, and then find a mentor that can help you really through that writing process, the creative process, as well as the book industry process. Maybe it's a different mentor for each one of those, but find people that can help you along the way, because it's, if you're writing for the first time, the process can be frustrating when you don't know what you don't know. And if you're anything like me, I want to write and then, okay, I'm published. So I want to see the end result right away. But it's longer than I thought it would ever be. And the process is just, uh, so there's so many unknowns that uh, help is very needed and helpful. Yeah.
So we're wrapping up now. Anything you want to say in closing to my audience?
Oh gosh, thank you for the support. I appreciate you buying the book, supporting the effort. I will let you know that part of the proceeds will go to cancer research. As of course I was impacted, my family was impacted, so I that's something that's very near and dear to my heart. My time as well as funds are going to cancer research. So thank you for supporting me.
Again, we've been speaking with the author of Pretty Girls Don't Get Cancer with Patricia Diaz. Patricia, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.